The most dangerous gaslighting rarely sounds cruel because control works best when it sounds like love. That is why you keep replaying conversations even when your body already knew something felt wrong. You were not confused because you were weak, but because the message was designed to blur reality. They wrapped pressure in softness, blame in concern, and disrespect in a tone that looked reasonable. So you kept giving them the benefit of the doubt while losing trust in yourself. And once that happens, they do not need to overpower you because you start correcting yourself. The pattern is not random, and it is not just bad communication either. It is psychological positioning where they stay innocent while you carry the emotional weight. Most people think manipulation always sounds obvious, but the strongest version sounds patient, warm, and helpful. That is exactly why these phrases get past your defenses and settle inside your thinking. If you catch the hidden move early, you stop apologizing for pain they created. And the first sign is simple: caring language that leaves you feeling smaller afterward. Real care may challenge you, but it does not quietly train you to distrust yourself. The first phrase is, "I am only saying this because I care about you." At first it feels protective, almost tender, like someone trying to save you from harm. But listen closely to what follows, because the phrase usually opens a door to control. It often comes before criticism you never asked for, especially about your choices, boundaries, or confidence. "I care about you" becomes a shield that makes disagreement look ungrateful or immature. Suddenly, you are not defending your decision anymore, because now you are defending your character. If you resist, they act wounded, as if your boundary proved you cannot handle honesty. That is the trick. Concern becomes leverage, and your discomfort gets rewritten as denial. Healthy concern sounds clear, respectful, and limited, while controlling concern feels persistent, invasive, and self-important. One leaves you informed, but the other leaves you tense, defensive, and strangely ashamed. A strong response here is simple: "I heard you, and I am comfortable deciding for myself." Then stop explaining, because over-explaining invites them to keep performing concern as authority. The second phrase is, "I am worried about you," and it sounds even gentler. This one is powerful because worry sounds loving, but it often sneaks past your boundaries. They say it when you become harder to influence, calmer to control, or less available emotionally. Notice the timing, because their worry often rises exactly when your independence starts becoming visible. You distance yourself from chaos, and suddenly they are deeply concerned about your attitude. You stop sharing everything, and now they think you are shutting people out. You stop reacting fast, and they claim you seem cold, stressed, or unlike yourself. What they call worry is often discomfort because your stability removes access to your emotions. They were comfortable when you were explainable, reachable, and easier to pull off center. So when you become quieter and clearer, they frame your growth like a problem. You do not need to argue your peace into existence for people who benefited from your confusion. A better response is, "I am okay and I do not need this interpreted for me." Say it once, then leave silence where you used to place emotional proof. The third phrase is, "You are overthinking it," and this one does heavy damage. Because sometimes you are thinking deeply, not excessively, and your instincts are actually collecting evidence. Manipulators love this phrase because it makes your pattern recognition sound like emotional instability. You notice inconsistency, avoidance, or a weird shift in tone, and they call it imagination. That text felt cold after warmth, that apology felt staged, and that smile felt sharp. Your system picked up something real before your mind had words for it. But when they say you're overthinking, you start editing your own perception. Then, you go back, smooth out their behavior, and erase the little warnings. This is how gaslighting works without yelling, because the attack lands inside your interpretation. The response here is not defensiveness, but precision. "No, I am paying attention." That line matters because it protects your observation without begging them to validate it. And when needed, trust the pause more than the explanation offered under pressure. Here is where many people get trapped, and it has nothing to do with intelligence. You assume a caring tone means good intent, even when the outcome keeps hurting you. But manipulation is measured by effect, not by volume, politeness, or soft eye contact. If their words make you smaller, doubtier, and easier to steer, that matters. The fourth phrase is, I just do not want you to get hurt. Again, it sounds protective, but often arrives when you are choosing something they cannot control. A new relationship, a new job, a new boundary, or a new confidence level. They predict pain before anything bad happens, and they present fear like wisdom. Sometimes they genuinely fear your risk, but just as often, they fear your freedom. Because if you grow without their permission, you might also grow beyond their influence. So they plant caution where courage was forming, and call that love. They make your next step feel dangerous and your staying put feel mature. The hidden cost is huge because you start abandoning yourself before life even answers. Try this instead. I can handle the outcome even if it is uncomfortable. That response tells them your fear belongs to you, not to their management. Now the fifth phrase is the quietest one and maybe the most controlling. It sounds harmless, I am just trying to help, and people say it constantly. But in toxic dynamics, help often arrives with pressure, guilt, and a hidden demand. If you refuse the help, they act rejected, offended, or weirdly betrayed. If you accept the help, they use it later as proof of your incompetence. Their assistance was never free because it was designed to create a subtle debt. Then control enters through obligation, and your gratitude gets used against your autonomy. You see this with parents, partners, bosses, and friends who always need to be needed. They solve problems you did not give them, then resent you for not surrendering. Your response can be calm and short, I did not ask for that, but thank you. Or even shorter when necessary, no thanks, I have it handled myself. That sentence matters because controlling people hate when help stops producing access. And this is the deeper truth most people miss about gaslighting that sounds caring. The words are not the whole weapon, because the delivery sets a trap too. They may say it softly, privately, or with a sad face and lowered voice. That presentation makes you feel cruel for resisting even before you answer. So you rush to reassure them, soften yourself, and prove you are reasonable. The moment you start proving your goodness, they quietly take the stronger position. Because now the conversation is no longer about their behavior, but your reaction. That shift is where control grows, especially if you have been trained to overexplain. Maybe you grew up around guilt, mixed signals, or people who punish disagreement. Maybe at work you learned to sound easygoing while people kept pushing your limits. Maybe in love you learned that calm questions sometimes arrived carrying hidden accusations. So when someone sounds caring, your system wants to keep the peace first. But peace built on self-betrayal is not peace, and your body knows that. This is why you can leave a polite conversation feeling strangely dirty and depleted. Nothing obvious happened, yet your energy dropped because your reality was quietly negotiated. And here's the part that changes everything once you really understand it. Gaslighting does not need you to believe them fully, it only needs hesitation. A few seconds of self-doubt is enough for them to move the frame. Enough for them to define the tone, your role, and what gets questioned. That is why the common mistake is trying to win clarity from a manipulator. You explain longer, become nicer, offer context, and hope truth will settle things. But explanations are useful only when the other person respects reality more than control. If control is their goal, your honesty becomes material they can reorganize against you. They will say you are dramatic, defensive, too sensitive, or impossible to talk to. Not because your point failed, but because confusion keeps them in the safer seat. Your real power begins when you stop treating every accusation like a courtroom. You do not need closing arguments for people committed to misunderstanding you. You need shorter responses, firmer exits, and less emotional availability to bait. Sometimes the strongest sentence is, that is your interpretation, not my reality. Sometimes it is, I'm not continuing this conversation if you keep twisting it. Sometimes it is simply, noted, followed by a silence they cannot easily control. Silence matters because it blocks the stage where they expected your frantic performance. You are hardest to manipulate when you stop rushing to make them comfortable. That does not mean becoming cold, cruel, or emotionally numb to everyone around you. It means becoming harder to steer through guilt, softness, panic, or fake concern. It means letting people have feelings about your boundary without making those feelings your job. It means trusting what happens after their caring phrase, not just the phrase itself. Do they respect your no, or do they punish it with sadness and blame? Do they give space, or do they keep circling until your resistance gets tired? Do they care about your well-being, or about your compliance looking voluntary? Those questions reveal more than their tone ever will if you stay honest. And once you see the pattern, the spell breaks faster than you expect. You stop chasing perfect wording because you finally see the game beneath the wording. You stop needing them to admit it because your clarity stops requiring permission. You stop trying to look reasonable to people invested in making you look unstable. And that is when their sweetest phrases start sounding exactly as controlling as they are. The relief is not in winning them over, but in recognizing yourself again. And remembering that your discomfort was data, not drama, and your pause was wisdom. In understanding that kindness without respect is not kindness you mean to trust. People who truly care do not need confusion to keep a place in your life. They can speak plainly, hear no, and survive your independence without turning tender words into pressure. So the next time someone sounds caring, pay attention to whether your freedom expands or shrinks. Pay attention to whether you feel clearer afterward or more responsible for their emotions. Pay attention to whether they honor your answer or keep massaging reality until it bends. Because control rarely announces itself honestly. It usually arrives sounding gentle, wounded, and deeply reasonable. Once you learn these 5 phrases, you hear the pressure hidden beneath the softness. And when you hear it, you do not have to fight harder. You just have to stop translating manipulation into love and stop volunteering your trust. That is a quieter kind of power, but it changes every relationship you keep. You become less explainable to toxic people and more understandable to yourself. You notice the bait sooner, leave sooner, and recover faster without carrying false guilt. And that is how caring-sounding control starts losing its grip on your mind. The moment you trust your reality again, their softest manipulation stops sounding persuasive at all.